Directly following World War II, the globe was engulfed in a bitter Cold War, divided between two superpowers, the United States of America and the USSR. The world was in a constant state of unease, overrun with political turmoil, proxy wars, and a nuclear arm race. Tonight, we're taking you back 50 years ago to the launch of Sputnik, the first ever artificial Earth satellite. Launched by the USSR in 1957, Sputnik symbolizes the start of the space race, an intense contest between these superpowers for dominance in space exploration capabilities. This ruthless battle led to rapid technological development within a short period of time, increased military potential, and drastically improved scientific capabilities. Join me as we take a look at the race for the conquest of space. I'm Madeline Meckelberg, and this is 60 Minutes.
It's a report from man's farthest frontier, the radio signal transmitted by the Soviet Sputnik, the first man-made satellite as it passed over New York earlier today.
John Lewis Gaddis, a PhD graduate from the University of Texas at Austin, is now a professor of U.S. and Cold War history at Yale University. He has published numerous books including The Cold War, A New History, and received a National Humanities Medal from President George W. Bush in 2005.
Could you give me a timeline of the major events that lead up to Sputnik?
Well, the Soviet Union had tested its first air-dropped thermonuclear bomb in November of 1955. In August of 1957, the USSR successfully launched the world's first intercontinental ballistic missile. And on October 4th, it used another such missile to orbit Sputnik, the first artificial Earth satellite. For the United States, it required no rocket scientist to predict the next step, placing nuclear warheads atop similar missiles, which could then reach any target within the United States in only half an hour.
Oleg Ivановsky was deputy chief constructor of the first and second Sputniks and chief constructor of the first Vostok spaceships.
Can you tell us a little bit about what went into the construction of Sputnik 1?
I was working under Sergei Korolev, who was head of Soviet rocketry projects. Under him, we designed a simplistic satellite that would only transmit radio waves out of 4 antennas. Construction of satellite was short of 1 month and was launched soon after on October 4th of 1957. Sputnik 1 only orbited Earth for another 4 months before returning to Earth, but during that time, satellites spurred rocket research for both United States and Soviet Union. Research caused fear of atomic bombs to launch across the world.
Was it the success of Sputnik that pushed the USSR to pursue further projects?
Because of Khrushchev's enthusiasm in first project success, he immediately started second Sputnik, but with new goals in mind. Sputnik 1 allowed for testing of Earth's orbit and Earth's atmospheric density. With this knowledge, Khrushchev wanted living animal on next test. Sputnik 2 was designed to fit living animal, but was still made of same metallic metal like Sputnik 1. From 2 launches, priceless information was gathered for many coming years of space race.
Valentina Tereshkova was the first woman in space. She was a textile worker before eventually becoming a Soviet cosmonaut. Her prominence led to her active role in Soviet politics, eventually being elected to the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet.
How did Sputnik affect your career?
Sputnik started it all. Sputnik led to Luna and first Vostok missions and eventually my mission. My going to space was great triumph, but even greater triumph for my country. I was just textile worker, then became Soviet cosmonaut. If women could be railroad workers in Russia, then why couldn't they fly in space? My career was true testament to greatness of Russia. I was chosen because I was embodiment of communist woman. A Soviet woman was in space before an American woman was. Sputnik was catalyst of it all. My involvement in the space program led to my political career.
Paul Dixon is a freelance writer who has published books on a variety of topics, including the space race, linguistics, and baseball. He was president of the Washington Independent Writers and is a member of the National Press Club.
Now, I understand you were a student in college when Sputnik first launched. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
I can recall exactly where I was when I heard about Sputnik's launch. I was around 18 years old, a college freshman at Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. A friend stopped me in the middle of campus to say that he had heard about it on the radio. Instinctively, we both looked up, and watching Sputnik traverse the sky was seeing history happen in front of my own eyes. To me, it was as if Sputnik was the starter's pistol in an exciting new race. I was electrified, delirious as I witnessed the beginning of the space age.
And now you've written a book on Sputnik that covers its launch and the aftermath. Could you talk to me about some of the things that followed Sputnik's launch?
Well, one memorable event for many Americans was the failure of the Project Vanguard launch in 1957. It was sort of a national joke amongst the people. But if you think about it with regards to the mindset of American people, many thought that if the Russians could send a huge satellite that crosses the Mississippi, then they could send a nuclear warhead into downtown Omaha. And that became a heavy topic that was reflected in Eisenhower's response.
Do you think you can elaborate a bit more on the president's response?
While many Americans had the perception that Eisenhower was passive after the launch of Sputnik, I believe he had a much larger agenda. In 1955, Eisenhower goes to Geneva and argues for open skies. The Russians say absolutely not, it's espionage. But what Eisenhower was thinking that if we go up first, then it's an invasion of airspace. But if they go up first, then it gives us carte blanche for us to build spy satellites. Some politicians began to realize that the space race could be a surrogate for war. You could have massive work, massive technologies, and both countries would have a grand view of the whole thing.
Thanks for joining us in our discussion of the launch of Sputnik. Join us next time as we discuss three-toed sloths and their effect on the environment. I'm Madeline Meckelberg, and this has been 60 Minutes.